Somewhere in America right now, someone just got called into their manager's office. They sat down and heard words that changed everything. "We are going to have to let you go." In that single moment, everything stopped. The commute they complained about, the coworker who annoyed them, the meetings that felt pointless, all of it suddenly irrelevant, because the paycheck attached to all of it was gone. And what happens next? What the next hour feels like, what the next week feels like, what the next 6 months feel like, has almost nothing to do with the job they just lost. It has everything to do with one number. A number most people never think about seriously, until a moment exactly like this one. How much they have saved. This video is about that number, about what job loss actually feels like, at every savings level, from nothing in the bank, to never having to worry about a job again. Find your level, and then watch what the next one looks like. Because the distance between where you are and where you want to be is not as far as you think, if you understand what each level actually requires. Level 1. Zero savings. The account is empty. The manager finishes talking, and the person in that chair does the math in real time. Rent is due in 11 days. There is $63 in the checking account. The car payment comes out automatically in 2 weeks. They walk out of the building and sit in their car in the parking lot and do not move for 20 minutes. Not because they are devastated about the job, because the math is terrifying. This is not a career moment. This is a survival moment. The first call is not to a recruiter. It is to a family member, asking if they can borrow money for rent. This month, just this month, the job search begins from a position of pure panic. Every interview carries a desperation that is almost impossible to hide, because it is real, because the clock is ticking loudly. And desperation in an interview is one of the most expensive things a person can carry. It costs them offers. It costs them negotiating power. It costs them the ability to say no to something that is not right, because they cannot afford to say no. At level 1, job loss is not a setback. It is a crisis. Immediate, total, consuming, and it will take months to recover from, even after the next job begins, because the debt accumulated during the gap follows them forward. Level 1 is where most Americans are right now, whether they know it or not. Level 2, 1 month of expenses saved. The manager finishes talking, and the math is different. Not safe, but different. There is enough in the account to cover this month. Just this month. But this month exists. And that changes something psychological immediately. The panic is still there, but it has a shape now. A timeline. 30 days. Which means the job search begins from urgency. Not survival panic, but urgent focus. They can take a week to process what happened, to update their resume properly, to reach out to contacts thoughtfully, to apply strategically rather than desperately. The interviews are still stressful, but the desperation is slightly lower, because there is a floor. A thin one, but a floor. At level 2, job loss is serious. It requires immediate action, but it is not immediately catastrophic. The difference between level 1 and level 2 is 1 month of expenses, sitting in an account doing almost nothing, until the moment it changes everything. Level 3, 3 months of expenses saved. This is what financial experts call the minimum emergency fund, and the reason they call it the minimum becomes very clear the moment job loss arrives. The manager finishes talking, and something unexpected happens. Relief. Not joy, not indifference, but a specific kind of relief that comes from knowing that today does not have to be a financial emergency. There is time, real time, 90 days of runway. The job search begins from a completely different place. Not panic, not urgency, intentionality. They take a week off, not because they can afford to waste time, but because they know that a clearer head produces better applications, better interviews, better outcomes. They can wait for the right opportunity instead of the first available one. They can negotiate salary. Because walking away is temporarily an option, they can say no to something that does not feel right. At level 3, job loss is an interruption, an unwanted one, but manageable, recoverable, without lasting financial damage. Most people who experience level 3 job loss look back on it differently than they expected, sometimes as the thing that redirected them towards something better, because they had enough time to make a good decision instead of a desperate one. Level 4, 6 months of expenses saved. The manager finishes talking, and the person in that chair nods calmly, asks a few practical questions about the transition timeline, shakes hands professionally, and walks out, not because they are not affected, but because 6 months of runway create something that 1 month cannot. Options. Real options. They can take 2 weeks before starting the job search. To rest. To think. To remember what they actually want. Questions that are impossible to answer clearly. When you are running on pure survival instinct, they can be selective, patient, strategic. They can consider whether this job loss is actually an opportunity to move into something different, something better aligned, something they have been thinking about, but never had the space to pursue. 6 months is long enough to start something new if the right opportunity presents itself. Not just find the nearest available job, but actually pursue the right next step. At level 4, job loss is an event, not a crisis, not even really an interruption, just an event, with a clear path forward, and enough time to walk it properly. Level 5, 1 year of expenses saved. The manager finishes talking, and the person in that chair feels something that surprises even them. Calm, not forced calm, not pretending, real calm, because 1 year of expenses in the bank is not just a financial cushion. It is a psychological transformation. The math at level 5 looks completely different. There is no cliff, no 30-day countdown, no desperate calculation happening in real time. Just time, a year of it, which means the job search can be a genuine search, not a race. They can consult, freelance, build something on the side while they look, take a course that makes them more valuable, travel briefly if they have been putting it off, rest without guilt. The interviews at level 5 carry a completely different energy. Not desperation, not even urgency. Genuine evaluation going in both directions. They are assessing the company as much as the company is assessing them. They are asking real questions about culture and growth. They are negotiating from actual strength, not from the fear of what happens if this does not work out. At level 5, job loss is almost a sabbatical. Unwanted at first, but by week 3, often surprisingly welcome. Level 6, investments generating passive income. The manager finishes talking, and the person in that chair smiles slightly, not because they are happy about losing the job, but because somewhere in the back of their mind, a thought completes itself quietly. I do not actually need this job, not in the way I used to, because at level 6, the savings account is not the safety net. The investment portfolio is, and the investment portfolio does not just sit there. It generates income, monthly, whether they work or not. The passive income from their investments may not cover everything, but it covers enough. That job loss is not a financial event at all. It is a career event, which is a completely different thing. A career event means deciding what comes next, without any financial pressure attached to that decision. They can take 6 months to think seriously, to explore something they have always been curious about, to start a business without the terror of needing it to work immediately, to consult on their own terms, to simply rest without a countdown. At level 6, job loss is a door, not a crisis, not an event, not even a setback. A door that opens into whatever they decide to walk toward next. Level 7, full financial independence. The manager finishes talking, and the person in that chair stands up, shakes hands, thanks them for the years, and means it genuinely. Because at level 7, this job was always optional. Their investments generate enough income to cover their life completely, without ever touching the principal. Job loss at level 7 is not a financial moment at all. It is simply the moment. A chapter ends, and they get to decide, with complete freedom and zero urgency, what the next chapter is. No panic, no timeline, no financial pressure of any kind. Just a question, what do I want to do next? And the freedom to answer it honestly. 7 levels. The same event. Losing a job. Experienced 7 completely different ways. Based on one number. How much is saved? At level 1, it is a crisis. At level 3, it is manageable. At level 5, it is almost a sabbatical. At level 7, it is simply the end of a chapter. The job loss does not change. The savings level changes everything about how it lands. Most Americans are at level 1 or 2. Most financial experts recommend level 3 as the minimum, and level 4 as the goal. The distance between level 1 and level 3 is not as large as it feels from inside level 1. It is 1 month of expenses saved, then 2, then 3, built slowly, consistently, automatically, before anything else takes that money, before the subscription, before the dinner out, before the reason not to, because the day the manager calls you in is coming for most people at some point, and how that day feels is being decided right now by a number in an account that you still have time to change. Which level are you at right now? And which level do you want to be at before that day arrives? If this video made job loss feel different, if it made your savings level feel urgent in a new way, hit that like button. Subscribe right now. Every week, we show you what money actually feels like at every level. The real version. The honest version. I will see you there.